Good day to all my dear students. Welcome back to English class. In the previous session, we had discussed the prose, the portrait of a lady written by Khushwant Singh. The portrait of a lady is a story of the author. He describes his relationship with his grandmother over the years. He pens down her daily activities and how she evolved as a character as time passed by. So today let us continue the prose. In the sixth paragraph, children, as the years rolled by, we saw less of each other. For some time, she continued to wake me up and get me ready for school. When I came back, she would ask me what the teacher had taught me. I would tell her English words and little things of Western science and learning. The law of gravity, Archimedes' principle, the world being round, etc. This made her unhappy. She could not help me with my lessons. She did not believe in the things they taught at the English school and was distressed that there was no teaching about God and the scriptures. She said nothing, but her silence meant disapproval. She rarely talked to me after that. So children, here we see as the years passed in the city, their interaction reduced. Their interaction, whose interaction? The interaction of the author Khushwant Singh and his grandmother. So their interaction was reduced. So we see for some time she continued to wake him up and get him ready for school. When he used to come back from school, she used to ask him what the teacher had taught him. And the author used to tell her English words and the little things of Western science and learning the law of gravity, Archimedes' principle and the world being round, etc. So, when the author was studying in the village school, he learnt only the morning prayers and the alphabets. But it is not same when he is learning in the school, well-known school in the city. So, this made her unhappy. Why she was unhappy? Because in that school, in the new school, he was never taught about God and religious scriptures. This made her sad. So, she did not approve of such an education. So, slowly she stopped talking to him. When I went up to university, I was given a room of my own. The common link of friendship was snapped. My grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. She rarely left her spinning wheel to talk to anyone. From sunrise to sunset, she sat by her wheel spinning and reciting prayers. Only in the afternoon, she relaxed for a while to feed the sparrows. While she sat in the veranda breaking the bread into little bits, hundreds of little birds collected round her, creating a veritable bedlam of chirpings. Some came and perched on her legs, but she never shooed them away. It used to be the happiest half hour of the day for her. So, when the author went to university, he had a room of his own. The common link of his friendship with his grandmother that day they had when they shared the same room was changed now, and thus his friendship with her ended. She became more private and spent her whole day spinning wheel. From sunrise and to sunset, she would sit and silently recite her prayers. Only in the afternoon, she relaxed for a while to feed the sparrows. While she sat in the veranda breaking the bread into little bits, hundreds of little birds. How many? Hundreds of little birds collected round her, creating a veritable bedlam of chirpings. So, when these birds collected round her, they used to make a sound. Okay, birds used to make the real uproar, making repeated short sounds. Okay, some came and perched on her. Okay, some came and perched on her legs, but she never shooed. She never shooed. It means she never made them go away by waving arms at them. At them refers to the birds, saying shoo, shoo. Okay, she never shooed them away. It used to be the happiest half hour of the day for her. So she was the happiest person in that half an hour day during the whole day. When I decided to go abroad for further studies, I was sure my grandmother would be upset. I would be away for 5 years. And at her age, one could never tell. But my grandmother could. She was not sentimental. She was not even sentimental. She came to leave me at the railway station but did not talk or show any emotion. Her lips moved in prayer. Her mind was lost in prayer. Her fingers were busy telling the beads of her rosary. Silently, she kissed my forehead, and when I left, I cherished the moist imprint as perhaps the last sign of physical contact between us. So, when I decided to go abroad, I refers to the author Khushwant Singh. When he decided to go abroad for further studies, he was sure that his grandmother would be upset. I would be away for 5 years. So he thought that his grandmother would be upset because he was going to abroad for 5 years. Okay, at her age, one could never tell, but my grandmother could. She was not even sentimental. She was not emotional. Instead, she came to leave him at the railway station, but did not talk or show any emotion. Grandma went to railway station in order to send off her grandson to abroad. So her lips moved in prayer. Her mind was lost in prayer. Her fingers were busy telling the beads of her rosary. Then what happened? She held him tightly and kissed his forehead. He thought it was the last physical contact with her, because as she was old, too old, and he was also going to abroad for 5 years. So he thought it was the last physical contact with her. And he felt the wet impression of her hand, which was dear to him. In the 9th paragraph, children, but that was not so. After 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. She did not look a day older. She had no time for words. She still had no time for words, and while she clasped me in her arms, I could hear the reciting her prayers. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with her sparrows, whom she fed longer and with frivolous rebukes. So, here the author says, but that was not so. Why he is saying not so? So, when he returned from abroad after 5 years, so the grandmother was still alive. So, after 5 years, I came back home and I was met by her at the station. Same way as he saw earlier, 5 years ago, she was the same thing even after the 5 years. She did not look a day older. Okay, she was looking same old as of 5 years, earlier 5 years. She still had no time for words, and while she clasped me, clasped means she holded him tightly, In her arms, I could hear. Here I refers to the author. He could hear when grandmother held him tightly. She was reciting the prayers. Even on the first day of his arrival, her happiest moments with her sparrows. So, even on the first day of his arrival, when he returned from abroad, the first day of his return from abroad, she was not with him, but instead she was with her sparrows, whom she fed longer, and with frivolous rebukes. So, here the author's grandmother criticized or checked on the sparrows in vain. The grandmother would scold the sparrows lovingly. Okay, she used to speak to the sparrows. Okay, she used to have the conversation in the sense she used to scold them sillily, but she never shooed them in a harsh way. So she used to scold them lovingly when they sat on her shoulders or at the times on the head also. In the evening, a change came over her. She did not pray. She collected the women of the neighborhood, got an old drum, and started to sing. For several hours, she thumped the sagging skins of the dilapidated drum and sang of the homecoming of the warrior. We had to persuade her to stop to avoid overstraining. That was the first time since I had known her that day that she did not pray. So, when the author arrived from abroad, he did not find any changes. But in the evening of that day, a certain change came over her. Here, her refers to grandmother. What change he saw in her? That she did not pray. So, what did she do? She collected the women of the neighborhood and got an old drum. So, she collected some of the women of the neighborhood and got an old drum and started to sing. For several hours she thumped. In the sense, she was hitting the sagging skin of the dilapidated drum. She was going on hitting the old drum. Sagging skin means loose skin of the torn out condition of a drum. Okay. Why she was going on hitting the drum? To celebrate the homecoming of the warrior. Who was the warrior here? The author. We had to persuade, here we refers to the author and his parents, to stop to avoid overstraining. So if grandma, she used to go on hitting the drum, what happens? She used to get tired. In order to stop that, they tried to stop that. That was the first time since I had known her that she did not pray. The next morning she was taken ill. It was a mild fever and the doctor told us that it would go. But my grandmother thought differently. She told us that her end was near. She said that since only a few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life, she had omitted to pray. She was not going to waste any more time talking to us. So, the next morning of the arrival of the author, we see she was taken ill. She became ill. It was a mild fever. She had a little fever, slight fever, and the doctor told them that it would go. It means as she was having a mild fever that would disappear very soon. But the author's grandmother thought differently. She was thinking in a different manner. She told them that her end was near. Her end refers to the death. So she told that her death was near. She said that since only 5 hours before the close of the last chapter of her life, she had omitted to pray. At the last hours of her death, she omitted, she dropped, she missed her prayers. She was not going to waste any more time talking to us. We protested. Here we refers to the author and his parents objected. They objected, but she ignored our protests. She lay peacefully in bed praying and telling her beads. Even before we could suspect, her lips stopped moving and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. A peaceful pallor spread on her face, and we knew that she was dead. So, we see that children, she lay peacefully in bed praying and telling her beads. Instead of talking to her family members, grandmother continued to pray and telling her beads. Okay, rosary. Even before we could suspect, even before they could feel, her lips stopped moving and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. The rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. That means she was dead. A peaceful pallor, here pallor is an unhealthy, pale appearance. Okay, she became pale. A peaceful pallor spread on her face, and we knew that she was dead. Yes, the grandmother, she died. Grandmother died. In the last paragraph, children, the sun was setting and had lit her room and veranda with a blaze of golden light. We stopped halfway in the courtyard. All over the veranda and in her room, right up to where she lay dead and stiff, wrapped in the red shroud, thousands of sparrows sat scattered on the floor. There was no chirping. We felt sorry for the birds, and my mother fetched some bread for them. She broke it into little crumbs the way my grandmother used to, and threw it at them. The sparrows took no notice of the bread. When we carried my grandmother's corpse off, they flew away quietly. Next morning, the sweeper swept the breadcrumbs into the dustbin. So, here we see, children, the sun was setting and had lit her room. The sun was setting, it was about to set, okay, and had lit her room, and had lit means and had brighted her room and veranda with a blaze of golden light. So here we see the sun is a bright star. So the veranda must be made of the glass. If it is a bright light. So it was portraying the brightness of light. So we stopped halfway in the courtyard, all over the veranda and in her room, right up to where she lay dead and stiff, wrapped in the red shroud. She was wrapped in the red cloth. So we see thousands of sparrows sat scattered on the floor. There was no chirping. There arrived thousands of sparrows. They sat on the floor, but there was no sound of the birds. Earlier we studied when the sparrows used to crowd around grandmother, they used to make certain sounds. But here, when grandma was no more, the sparrows made no chirpings. We felt sorry for the birds, and my mother, the author's grandmother, fetched some bread for them. Them refers to the birds. She broke it into little crumbs, little pieces, the way my grandmother used to, and threw it at them. The sparrows took no notice of the bread. When we carried my grandmother's corpse away, they flew away quietly. So the sparrows took no notice of the bread. They did not look at the bread. They were not interested to eat the bread, but they were very sad because the grandmother was no more. The birds were so sensitive they did not want to eat bread, but were mourning the death of the one who had fed them for so many days. Yes. Next morning, the sweeper swept the breadcrumbs into the dustbin. So, children, this was the story of the portrait of the lady written by Khushwant Singh. Hope you have understood it. Watch this video many times until you understand. Thank you, children.